Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and this video is about Trump's shutdown entering its first month, well, ending its first month. And he called it this himself. He christened it the Trump shutdown. Fine. Direct quotation, you can call it the Trump shutdown. All right, Donald, we'll take you at your word for once. He said that on television to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So far, he hasn't denied it. But watch this space. It wouldn't surprise me if before long he tells yet another bare-faced, provable lie, as he is a pathological liar, and say, I never, ever said that. But there you go. I have to take my hat off to him for chutzpah, sheer effrontery when it comes to completely shameless lying. What staggers me is that a large minority of Americans will fall for that, will lap it up, will accept what at some level they must know is a flagrant falsehood and say he still has credibility. I'd rather believe him than the other guy just because he stokes hatred against Hispanics. Anyway, so President Trump is 14% down in his popularity rating. Well, it was on minus 14%, and he's falling still. So the longer this shutdown goes on, the further he's going to fall. Now, about a year ago, he was 20%, on minus 20% in his approval ratings. And he's, as I say, about minus 14%. And he's going down towards that minus 20%. He might bottom out around there. Obviously, I'd like him to be absolutely humiliated and his opponent to wipe the floor with him. I'd like the Republicans to chuck him as a candidate, but I doubt they're going to do that. So his popularity is dropping lower with every day of the shutdown. There probably is a flaw to that. I think he'll probably not go below 30% ever, and may not even go that low. So remember, he won quite narrowly on 46% because his votes were very efficiently distributed in terms of the Electoral College. So he needed 46% to win last time. Remember, he was over 2% behind, over 3 million votes behind. So he's on 40% now. Obviously, much depends on who the Democrats pick as their candidate next time. Surely not someone with such high negatives as Hillary Clinton, a polarizing figure. You take Al Gore, not many people loathed him. You take John Kerry, again, not many people detested him, but Hillary was execrated by many. There are many people of seemingly moderate opinion, and if they heard the name Hillary, they spat blood. That brought out the beast in them. So Trump is blamed by more for this shutdown than the Democrats are. And obviously the Republicans get increasingly jittery. A few Republicans were gallant from the outset and said, no, we mustn't have a shutdown. More have broken ranks, and I suspect yet more will join those Republican rebels saying, no, go against Trump. Come on, we got to reopen the government. So Trump has backed himself into a corner. He verbally agreed a compromise over a month ago. Then Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter got on the airwaves. Seemed like Rush Limbaugh's the real vice president and said, no, we mustn't have this. So obviously Trump got cold feet about it and he panicked and he reneged on that agreement. I know the agreement was not legally binding. So he's now demanding funds for his wall, $5.5 billion, which everybody knows is not even half the minimum estimate for constructing this wall. Even Trump doesn't always call it a wall, it's a fence. All right, should we compromise on barrier? That's a generic term which could cover either wall or fence. So I'm very glad there's going to be no State of the Union address, as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, has denied him one. Remember, I think it's under Woodrow Wilson, the State of the Union was simply a letter which was sent, and I believe it was read out in Congress, but the President didn't do it in person. Trump could deliver a State of the Union address on television from the Oval Office or from just about anywhere else. Because remember, the State of the Union address, when it takes place at the joint session of the two houses of Congress and the Supreme Court's there and the cabinet bar one member, blah, 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 a handful of these top officials are taken to a secret location just in case somebody manages to blow up the Capitol and decapitate the United States. They don't want to render the complete country leaderless. So it's an extraordinarily high-risk moment. Virtually the entire leadership of the nation is in one room for over an hour. So Trump doesn't automatically get to go to Congress. He has to be invited, and the Speaker has chosen not to invite him for the first time ever. Well, why should she? All these federal workers are working without pay. This is the longest shutdown in history. Well, Trump, it really is breaking records for all the wrong reasons. And it costs a lot. Put on the security. Why should these security officers work without pay? Does Trump work without pay? No. Do Congress work without pay? No. And it's worrying. There's like sort of airport security officers, the people who scan your bags, who pat you down. They are working without pay. How much longer can they afford to go on doing this? It's not paid very much. So they say, well, work without pay. Is that slavery or what? We're just going to go. Even though it's been furloughed, temporarily laid off, might find other jobs in the meantime and not come back ever, because they can't risk this happening again. It's happening almost routinely. Every couple of years there's a shutdown, usually not this long, but why should anyone work for a single day without being paid the wage they've earned? And also, what is an essential worker? Most people would like to view their job as essential, and they find it fatally insulting to be told they're not essential. If you really don't need me, fine, I'll go somewhere else I'm valued and not come back. Or even the essential workers, I'll go somewhere else I'm actually paid, especially as we're told that like the profit motive is sacrosanct in America, particularly for Republicans. Why shouldn't they get a living wage? Anyway, people like Ben Shapiro are saying, well, if you don't work, you're going to starve to death. All right, there they are working and they're still going to starve to death, looks like. Food stamps, well, I know some Republicans are against those. And don't tell me these people are undeserving, they do work. So even people who administer food stamps, they might not work soon. So it seems to be a test of mettle for Trump and Republicans, to some extent Democrats too. Now I suppose Trump was banking on the Democrats blinking first, and their hearts would break. They couldn't bear the suffering this was inflicting on federal government workers, and to spare the agony of these public sector workers, say, all right, we'll just reopen the government, give you something for the war. So Trump has now made further concessions. He's conceded DACA, ouch, deferred action for childhood arrivals. People who are brought across the border illegally in their childhood would not necessarily be removed, would be given work permits for a few years. I'm not sure they got a path to citizenship, but anyway, rather than being immediately booted out, some of these people could have come across as babes in arms. There was no fault of their own. They ended up in the United States illegally. I know it's their parents' fault. Okay, they'd be grateful for the years they had, and then go back, and mostly they speak fluent English and blah, blah, blah. They've known no other homeland. Anyway, but this would enrage his base, who are obsessed with illegals, if he actually got that deal. They'd get a bit of their wall, but, some of these illegal immigrants, these people would be allowed to stay forever. And it's fascinating the way many of Trump's base are Christian fundamentalists. What happened to compassion? What happened to little, to Jesus, meek and mild, suffer the little children to come unto me? Where's the forgiveness? Where's the mercy? Taking pity on the sojourner. That's the part of Christianity that they don't like. It's the flog and burn bit that they do like. It's the fire and brimstone and the punishing to the 10th generation and things like that. It's when the Lord drave out the Canaanites and slew them all and things like that. That's the irate God of the Old Testament who was revengeful that inspires those sort of people. So these illegal immigrants taking jobs, and I suppose they do take a few jobs, but what sectors do they work in? Principally things like fruit picking, washing dishes in restaurants, working construction. And I think more than a few have worked on Trump construction sites. And so that's that, because obviously they can't work legally, and they often don't have whatever educational diplomas, and sometimes they can't speak English very well. So they can't do white-collar jobs for the most part. Not the DACA people, because they're given work permits, but they're those who are kind of in the hidden economy, in the black economy, working underground. But if all those illegals who are working left suddenly, several million of them, that would create shortages in certain sectors. So severe paucity of workers in some of these low-paid jobs, and the economy might ground to the halt. But wage compression would end. All right, that's good. But instead of moaning about, oh, this is keeping our wages down, I've got a better idea. Why not legislate for a federal national minimum wage? A higher one. And so there's a solution to that, but obviously Republicans choose not to do it, and instead to scapegoat the very poorest in society. That's it. The problem is the very poorest have too much, but the billionaires don't have enough. It defies logic. Anyway, so unemployment is not the main problem in the United States, obviously, because unemployment is very, very low. Now, this is one of Trump's successes that he's trumpeted himself. It's only about 2% now. But the problem is people working 2 or even 3 jobs just to get by. They can't make ends meet if they don't. And what quality of life is that? No wonder that the lumpen proletariat have health problems with obesity and so on, because all they can avoid is junk food. They don't have time to cook properly. They can't afford to go to the gym, that kind of thing. But anyway, if Trump caves in and signing off on a budget without a wall, some people will abandon him. It will be a mortal sin that some of his voters cannot forgive. because that was his best known policy. That was distinctive Trump, vintage Trump. So Trump has capitulated to pressure from the shock jocks, as I've said, and I suppose they will lambast him mercilessly if he surrenders. So his so-called wall would be unworkable. As engineers have said, it was a disaster waiting to happen. It would be way too costly, it would be ineffective, it would take perhaps a decade to construct, if indeed they managed to get the land anyway, which is owned by private individuals and state governments, and the whole thing can be snarled in court cases for years. This barrier is supposed to take an hour to get through, you know, if people are hacking through. So what they do, the coyotes, that's the people smugglers, you could hack through, organize it in several different points. And there are only so many border patrol agents, they can't be everywhere but once. We'll start here at 1 in the morning, another one 50 miles over there at 2 in the morning, another one between at 3 in the morning, another one here at 4 in the morning, in the middle of the night, several different places, and they'll be running here and there, and they can't be strong everywhere. You know, this wall will only be as strong as its weakest point. And tunneling under it, people could sail around, come in. I mean, there are even drug cartels have even built their own mini submarines. Fly to Canada, cross over the Canadian border. How much is that going to cost? You know, you can't build a wall everywhere. So people often come illegally through legal ports of entry. They come on as tourists, they come on business trips, they come as students, whatever, and they just overstay their visa and just disappear. So federal government workers are going to leave their jobs. People who've been there serving the public for decades, in some cases, becoming adept in their roles, and they might never come back. Some valuable people who've acquired great virtuosity serving the public will leave and will not be easily replaced, and that will be Trump's legacy. Anyway, I really hope it ends now and Trump comes to his senses. I suspect he's going to cave in. He's moving in that direction already, and someone's finally going to slap some sense into him. Because he'll just be abandoned by more and more people. I'm not sure he's that calculating, but morality aside, simply from his electoral point of view, which would be better for him to give in now or him to have a shutdown right for the next 2 years because he wasn't getting his wall? I suppose it's probably better for him to give in now, but it's not going to look pretty either way. If he'd made a reasonable compromise 6 weeks ago, none of this would have happened. It would have made a small dent in his popularity. He could have recovered. But as it is, Trump is really staring defeat in the face next election. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but I'm getting a little bit confident that he won't be re-elected.